My name is Marissa Wood. It's likely that my first brain injury was when I was an infant. And so throughout my life, I've always been very impatient, impulsive. From a very young age, I was, constantly encouraged by adults to slow down. Kind of a bull in a china shop too, in a lot of ways, other than just being impulsive, very clumsy. I'm notorious for breaking things and tripping and falling, so I had worked through some of that and made a lot of progress on my own through like therapy, yoga, mindfulness, things like that. And then this past year, I hit my head on a car door, and I then started to have symptoms that were vision related that I hadn't had before. Pain in my head that I hadn't had before. Pain in my neck that I hadn't noticed or had before. And so my vision started to go double. I, in June, was told that I could no longer work in the emergency room. I'm a clinical social worker, and I worked in an emergency room, and it was just way too stimulating, and it was not, possible for me at that point. And I was also seeing clients private practice and stopped doing that as well. And it was very difficult. This past 9 months, that's when the symptoms that I really were able to identify as TBI symptoms started to interfere with my life. And people who used to really understand me no longer could understand me. Not necessarily everyone was on board with the TBI diagnosis. Not necessarily everyone believed all of the symptoms all of the time because they can't see them. And so it was really difficult to explain my experience to people, and I started to feel very isolated. Over the summer, I was alone in my head a lot of the time, just kind of trying to get through each day. Doing dishes was an impossible task. Doing laundry, things like that, would start to make me feel like I had been in a roller coaster. And then I hit my head again this past December, just very slightly, enough to cause my double vision to worsen a little bit. I began having symptoms that were really scary that I didn't know were necessarily a part of TBI. I lost control over my body one day whenever I went into a grocery store. The doors opened and the fluorescent lights. I suspect it was what they call visual overwhelm, where the brain is unable to keep up with everything it's trying to process, and so parts of it shut down. I was then hospitalized in a psychiatric hospital for a week and was completely misunderstood by staff there. And those things have never happened in my life before. I've struggled with mental health all my life, for sure. I was depressed as a kid. I remember, being 10 or 11, 12 and learning that word and realizing that I was definitely depressed and that I had anxiety. I've struggled with eating disorder, addictions, was in rehab at 18, and so it's not certain 100% that I can attribute all of that to the brain injury, but it's likely, and I know that I feel more peaceful now, and I feel more capable now, and less like a freight train, less like I just have to. I used to just feel like I was crawling out of my skin. Anytime that I was sitting still, I was just pretending to be calm. And while I've made progress on my own before coming to Cognitive FX on a lot of that, I definitely feel like this is like the last bit to the summit. Before Cognitive FX, I couldn't be sitting in this room without a hat or sunglasses. That was my life, kind of peeking out at life and not able to live to my fullest. I wasn't able to even walk my dogs as regularly as I used to, and so life had changed quite a bit, and I found out about Cognitive FX, and after coming here after my first day, I noticed some changes. The light sensitivity was huge after that first day. And I told myself when I found out about Cognitive FX, I really kept it in my mind that this was going to work. I heard other people's experiences, and I listened to Dr. Fong on a podcast explain the science behind all of this stuff, and I was extremely interested and fascinated, and honestly a little bit overwhelmed to hear that there was a whole new way of looking at traumatic brain injury that wasn't just okay, you need to rest. Before, the ways that I was treating some of my vision problems, Dr. Fung and the staff here kind of call them Band-Aids, like the Prism lens that I would use to correct my double vision. And I thought that was the answer before coming here. That was kind of what I was told. This is how you fix this. And I was told I couldn't do a lot of different therapies until that my vision got better. So it was really nice to come to a place and have them, you know, work me immediately very hard. So through the week I kept telling myself, you know, that this was going to work, this was going to work, and it has been. I noticed even like mental processing, I felt like I was a little bit clearer after the first couple days. And I still have a lot of work to go with my vision. They have a neuro-ophthalmologist that I was able to meet with. It was unlike any other ophthalmologist that I've met with, and I've met with neuro-ophthalmologists as well, and his testing was extremely thorough, and he's set me up with someone in my state. I'm from Missouri, and there are not a lot of them, but there are some, and he's able to find them. And I know that I have a lot of work to go, but I know that I've already seen so much progress in really 4 full days of very intense hard work. And I intend to continue with a lot of that when I get home to continue getting better. I do feel more like myself than I have in a really long time. I'm seeing the results. Today was amazing. I didn't expect to see that much improvement on the page. And those little numbers, somehow they mean something when you see them change like that. And so that's been really amazing. Everyone here is extremely nice and helpful, and so many people who work here have been patients here themselves. And I think that from the very beginning is super encouraging, because no one would go work at a place that they hadn't been helped by if they'd, you know, made the sacrifice to be here. And so it is hard, but it is really good. And this morning, for the first time in months, I was able to write a whole page of journal entry, and I haven't been able to read in a long time. So, I mean, I've been able to read little bits here and there, but I look forward to being able to read a book someday, maybe in the near future. Yeah, it's been really awesome, and I highly recommend anyone who has any history of, or suspected history of, injury to the head to check it out if you're having symptoms, because they can help. The reason why I was really drawn here is because there's data backing up the processes they use to get the brain more balanced. And the fact that they do a pre-test and a post-test, it's scientific. It's not, you know, we think this might work. We know this has worked and will work for you.